The global economy today faces challenges and uncertainties reminiscent of geopolitical tensions that defined the Cold War. But this time, the battlefield is economic influence, technology, and trade, rather than nuclear arsenals. As the United States, China, and Russia assert their economic strategies and geopolitical interests, experts and policymakers are increasingly asking, is the world heading toward a new Cold War, this time in the realm of money, markets, and technology? The term Cold War evokes images of decades-long strategic competition, espionage, proxy conflicts, and ideological rivalry. Translating this concept to the modern economy requires understanding that power today is measured not just by military might, but also by control over trade routes, technological leadership, currency dominance, and international investment. The tools of economic influence include sanctions, trade agreements, infrastructure projects, and control over emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, semiconductors, and digital currencies. These elements shape not only national wealth, but global influence. One of the clearest indicators of economic competition, mirroring Cold War dynamics, is the US-China relationship. Over the past 2 decades, China has transitioned from being primarily a manufacturing hub to a technological powerhouse with ambitious global ambitions. Investments in AI, 5G, robotics, and renewable energy reflect a strategy not just to compete, but to lead. China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, with its multi-trillion-dollar investments in infrastructure across Asia, Africa, and Europe, also represents an economic and strategic vision reminiscent of superpower competition. Through these projects, Beijing secures trade routes, strengthens partnerships, and enhances its global influence, all while providing countries with alternatives to Western-led financial institutions. The United States, historically the dominant economic power, faces its own challenges in this evolving landscape. While it maintains a technological edge in many sectors, the rise of China and the strategic assertiveness of Russia complicate US influence. The dollar remains the primary global reserve currency, giving Washington unique leverage in trade, finance, and sanctions. Yet, as alternative financial arrangements gain traction, such as BRICS-led initiatives or bilateral agreements in local currencies, the US must adapt to a world where economic dominance is increasingly contested. America's response has included strengthening alliances, investing in advanced technologies, and employing trade and sanction tools to maintain leverage. Russia, meanwhile, adds complexity to this emerging economic Cold War. Traditionally reliant on energy exports, Moscow has faced sanctions and economic isolation from Western markets, prompting it to pivot toward alternative partnerships. Trade with China, India, and other non-Western nations, alongside efforts to reduce reliance on the dollar, reflects a strategy of resilience and influence. Russia's actions demonstrate that economic competition today is not limited to the largest economies. Middle powers with strategic resources or positions can still exert influence and shape global markets. Technology is a central arena in this economic contest. Semiconductors, AI, 5G networks, and quantum computing are not merely tools for innovation. They are instruments of geopolitical leverage. Countries that lead in these technologies can influence global standards, trade flows, and security outcomes. The US has long dominated semiconductor design and advanced AI research, but China's state-backed initiatives, talent pool, and investment in AI infrastructure indicate a serious challenge. Control over the supply chains for critical components, such as microchips, also adds a strategic dimension. Shortages or export restrictions can ripple across global markets, illustrating the interconnectedness of economic and geopolitical strategies. Trade policies and tariffs are another reflection of this new Cold War mindset. The US-China trade war, which began in earnest in 2018, highlighted how economic tools could serve strategic objectives. Tariffs, export controls, and investment restrictions were used not merely to protect domestic industries, but to influence global supply chains and signal geopolitical intent. Similarly, China's strategic use of trade agreements and infrastructure financing demonstrates how countries leverage economic policies to expand influence without resorting to military confrontation. In this sense, the battle is fought with contracts, pipelines, and factories, rather than troops and tanks, but the stakes are just as high. Energy markets are another battlefield. Russia's position as a major oil and gas supplier, particularly to Europe, and the global shift toward renewable energy illustrate the intersection of economics, technology, and strategy. Energy dependency can translate into political leverage, and nations are increasingly aware of the economic risks of over-reliance on single suppliers. This awareness is driving investments in renewable energy, nuclear power, and alternative sources, all of which have economic and geopolitical implications. For example, the global push for electric vehicles is changing demand patterns for oil, lithium, and rare earth minerals, reshaping both markets and power structures. Global finance also plays a pivotal role in this emerging Cold War. The dominance of the US dollar enables Washington to exert influence through sanctions, lending conditions, and international financial regulations. At the same time, initiatives like the BRICS New Development Bank, digital currencies, and regional payment systems provide countries with alternatives, gradually reducing the monopolistic leverage of the dollar. The proliferation of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, particularly China's digital yuan, could further shift economic influence, allowing states to transact internationally without relying solely on Western-controlled systems. Yet, this emerging Cold War is not solely about confrontation. It is also about adaptation. Multinational corporations operate across borders, supply chains are interdependent, and capital flows remain global. Unlike the ideological rigidity of the original Cold War, today's economic contest is characterized by competition intertwined with cooperation. Companies like Apple, Tesla, and Huawei operate in complex regulatory and geopolitical environments, navigating tensions while continuing to innovate and expand. Economic interdependence creates both friction and incentives for negotiation, making this new Cold War far more nuanced than the one defined by military standoffs and nuclear deterrence. Labor markets, education, and talent development are also critical factors. Countries investing in AI, high-tech manufacturing, and research-intensive industries are positioning themselves for long-term economic influence. Talent mobility, intellectual property protection, and education systems all influence competitive advantage. Nations that cultivate skilled workforces and foster innovation are better equipped to maintain economic leadership, while those that lag risk falling behind in the global hierarchy. The economic Cold War is as much about people and knowledge as it is about money and markets. Global trade networks remain another dimension of competition. Port infrastructure, shipping routes, and logistics systems are critical for moving goods and sustaining economic influence. Strategic investments, such as China's ports across Asia and Africa, or US support for international trade alliances, illustrate that physical infrastructure is a component of economic power. Control over trade corridors enables influence over pricing, availability, and political alignment, turning logistics into a strategic asset in the economic Cold War. Sanctions, export controls, and regulatory frameworks are being used as strategic tools rather than solely domestic policy measures. The US has demonstrated how financial sanctions can influence geopolitical behavior, while other nations are exploring countermeasures, such as alternative payment systems or regional cooperation agreements. The interplay between enforcement, compliance, and strategic calculation mirrors the deterrence strategies of the original Cold War, albeit executed in financial and technological arenas rather than military theaters. Environmental policy and sustainability are also emerging as economic battlegrounds. Countries that lead in renewable energy, electric vehicles, and carbon-neutral technologies can gain competitive advantages while shaping global markets and regulatory standards. The green transition is not only an environmental imperative, but an economic and strategic contest. Nations investing in green technology create new industries, jobs, and global influence, while those slow to adapt risk losing economic relevance in critical future markets. Central banks and monetary policy are central to today's global economic competition. Interest rates, quantitative easing, and currency management influence capital flows and global competitiveness, with the US Federal Reserve shaping emerging markets, while China promotes broader international use of the yuan. These financial maneuvers act as subtle yet powerful instruments in what many analysts call a new economic Cold War. Geopolitical tensions, territorial disputes, alliances, and security concerns further amplify the stakes, while cybersecurity, data sovereignty, and technology standards have emerged as critical battlegrounds for influence and control. Despite these pressures, the modern economy is highly interconnected. Global supply chains, mobile capital, and multinational corporations create a competitive landscape where cooperation and rivalry coexist. The digital economy adds another layer of complexity. Leadership in cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and digital payments translates directly into both economic and strategic leverage. Emerging markets in Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia are increasingly central, with investments, trade agreements, and infrastructure projects shaping opportunities, influence, and alliances. In conclusion, while outright conflict is unlikely, the intensity of strategic competition is unmistakable. Nations that succeed in innovation, investment, and strategic policy will define the rules of global trade, market access, and economic influence for decades. The world is entering a multidimensional economic and technological Cold War. a high-stakes contest where decisions made today will shape the balance of power, the structure of markets, and the flow of prosperity for generations. Visualizing this, imagine a global chessboard, where every move in finance, technology, and policy reshapes the game, and the stakes are nothing less than the future of the global order.